Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Insert the music here. Insert the music here. All right. Good evening, tribe, and welcome to Merriwether's World. My feeble attempt to explain to you the majesty that surrounds you. And tonight, you love it, you hate it, you can't ignore it. Cedar. All right. But before we start, let's do a little brief introduction. We got some new faces here. So I am Dr. Mark Merriwether Vorderbruggen, creator of the Foraging Texas website, author of Idiot's Guide Foraging. It's not actually see-through, it's a green screen. Co-creator of the Wazoo Survival Foraging Bandana, monthly article writer for Charm East Texas, and lots of other stuff. So yeah, it's good to be here Thursday night. I got to tell you, all the tribe members that normally show up at the donut shop, there will be a puppet show tomorrow. Yes. But anyway, those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, tune in to the same spot, usually starting around 7:25 a.m., running until 8 a.m. for the donut shop at the beginning of the world. It is a random conversation gathering, social non-distancing via virtual computer stuff. So you can hang out, talk with people, get support if you need it, get love if you need it, vent if you need it, and definitely just have a weird time, because we have a weird time. Hey, okay, cool. Shyla, yay, puppets. Yay, another disaster in the making. So yeah. Okay, before we start Cedar, for years I've had a saying: if you want to understand business, read The Godfather. The movie, the book about the mobsters, and it's just business. Yeah. So the knives have come out for the company. So anyway, but we'll talk about that tomorrow. Tonight, it's about cedar. So again, just before we start, I'm going to throw out a couple of things here. So of course, Foraging Texas, the website, one of the things beside all these, 200 and some plants with all sorts of good information, there is the list of upcoming classes page. And a new one was just added today, February 27th, out by Jasper, Texas. I will be back at Uncommon Bees. So if you know their honey, and you love their honey, if you know their honey, I will be back out there with them. So one of the sponsors tonight, of course, is Uncommon Bees. If you are looking for any sort of honey infused with pretty much damn near anything from garlic, basil, 7 mushrooms, ghost peppers. You have the ghost peppers in there, just things like that. Absolutely amazing stuff. Check it out. And let me throw the coupon code up here, because if you order between now and 9:30 tonight after Merriwether's World, apiary wares, thank you, from Uncommon Bees themselves. But if you use the coupon Forking Weeds, you get 25% off tonight. Otherwise, you get 10% off. So check them out. Gotta love them. Come and see us. It'll be good. And then, of course, shout out to Wazoo Survival. They have all sorts of get you back home gear. But of course, my personal favorite is the Foraging Bandana, because I helped design it along with Dr. Nicole Appelian. Do we get the picture of her? Yes. So she was a 2-time attendee on History Channel's Alone. Amazing wilderness, primitive skills survivalist lady. Totally cool. Totally sweet. So yeah. And Wazoo Survival is the one who pays for the StreamYard account that allows me to bring this show to you. So cool. Supporting them keeps me on the air. And I can't get my There we go. Okay, so we'll throw a few more sponsors out as we get there. Quick check. Any questions? Can I get an insect next to my name? Okay. I guess a profile picture, you could put an insect there. Okay, let me do this, and let me do that, and let me do this. And we go there, and that. All right. So, without further ado, except for a quick sip of water, tonight we are looking at cedar. So, we're going to jump right in. There are basically two major cedars, aka junipers, because scientific name Juniperus virginiana and Juniperus ashei, but they are the two main cedars. I'm going to start out with some facts about both, and just kind of set the stage. Then we're going to answer the question, are they invasive? And then we're going to move on to some interesting, useful knowledge and identification of them. So, all right, without further ado, red cedar. This is the East Texas Cedar, and it goes from here all the way up into Canada. The oldest known specimen, 940 years old. How old it can actually grow remains to be seen, but the oldest so far, over 900 years. It is what's known as a pioneer species. That means when the land is barren and abused, and everything is tore up, and the rain is washing away the soil and leaching away the minerals and just leaving practically a desert wasteland, red cedar comes and says, I can fix that. It has a really cool voice. It actually sounds like this. So the red cedar comes in, puts a deep root, puts out its leaves, drops lots of organic matter, and starts repairing the land. This is important later. The heartwood is considered to be rot resistant. It is loaded with cedar oils, which is a complex mixture of chemicals. But one of the compounds in there, probably several actually, are antifungal, useful, that just protect the wood from the normal fungus that would break down wood. That's why it has a great use in anything that you want to last. The wood itself, that cedar oil, repels moths. That's why it was always used to make the blanket chests and the closets back when we used to sleep under wool blankets and wrap ourselves in wool clothing. There's a type of moth that loves to eat, the larva loves to eat wool. And it was discovered that if you make the closet or the trunk out of cedar, it keeps the moth away so it doesn't lay the egg, so your wool suit doesn't get all chewed up. Henry David Thoreau, the guy who wrote Walden, the classic I'm running away from society for a year and bonding with nature. The reason he was able to do that is his parents owned a red cedar, orchard that was a primary supplier of pencils across the New England states. And so they were quite wealthy because they raised cedar trees to be made into pencils. And so Henry could just sit by the lake for a year, not really doing anything to support himself because he had pencil money coming from his parents. I was a little surprised to learn this next one, that the Native Americans actually liked using the red cedar for bows. Usually when you think of bow and arrows, you think of Osage orange. But yeah, the cedar apparently was another popular one for that. The name Baton Rouge in Louisiana basically means red stick, which came from the red cedar. So Baton Rouge is named after the red cedar trees that surrounded that area or were in that area before they all got cut down and made into the city. And it produces its pollen in late winter, generally about a month before the Texas cedar, aka mountain cedar, Juniperus ashei. So when the white man first arrived in the Hill Country, the Texas cedars were really only found in the canyons of the Hill Country. That is because in the canyons, they were protected by the fires. They were, at that stage, single trunk trees with up to 3 feet in diameter. They were big trees, and they were really excited to be fine because they made great lumber. You could, cut it into rot resistant wood, which especially, Houston is kind of rotty. It helped there, but a lot of stuff was being made out of this. The reason it wasn't spread so much, over the other place and only in the canyons, to think, okay, how often do fires start? Well, all the time. If you read anything about Native Americans, the best description I've ever seen of their basic practices was that basically North America was filled with a continent of pyromaniacs. Up to twice a year, they would start big fires to go through the woods and the prairies all across North America. It was their way of keeping certain plants in check and, optimizing it for other plants. So across the Hill Country, West Texas, the, bi-yearly, twice a year prairie fires help control the cedar trees. And so they only lived down in the canyons and got really big. So like the red cedar, it is considered a pioneer species. When it sees damaged land, it goes in and starts trying to heal it by taking over, protecting it, dropping leaf litter, dropping branches to try and reinvigorate the soil with organic matter. Small problem, though, is that it actually prevents a lot of the prairie grasses from growing between the shade, mainly because of the shade. They shade out the grass, and if you know anything about prairie grasses, they too have very deep roots. This is really deep roots, and they help hold soil in place, and it allows them to survive a lot of droughts and so forth. So when the fire stopped, the cedars started moving in, blanked out the grass, and it just became a downward spiral. Now, on the plus side, the cedar trees do work as nurse trees for certain other trees, including the much beloved and extremely hard to grow Texas madrone. This is also known as the peeling lady. If you are out in the West Texas, and if you know what a crepe myrtle looks like, imagine the trunk of a crepe myrtle with that peeling bark and a beautiful red pink undertones, and just a beautiful tree with these small edible fruits on it. Very cool tree. I don't have it up on Foraging Texas yet because I haven't been able to get pictures of the fruit, but the Texas madrone's a tree worth keeping. Now, for those of you, and let me put up this link. I guess I'll have to put it up later. So where you have the cedars, well, San Antonio was starting to grow big time way back at the turn of the century. And there was a big demand for these cedar trees. And so where there was a demand, people usually, at least at one time, used to try and fill that demand. And suddenly a bunch of Scott-Irish, no, I spelled it wrong, Scott-Irish people showed up and became cedar choppers. So there are a lot of stories still around San Antonio. I worked next to a guy back in Baker Hughes, Carson Parker, that used to talk about the cedar choppers, and they were a rough group. They stuck to they stuck to axes and handsaws for chopping this up and digging it up and bringing it into town into the 70s before they finally switched over to chainsaws. But they were hard drinking, hard living, don't mess with them sort of people who lived out in the boonies. When you think of, like, I don't want to use the term hillbillies because definitely not hillbillies, but that was kind of the image they got. Okay. So the Texas cedar also produces pollen in midwinter. So midwinter to early spring. It's happening right now, actually. So, and we'll talk more about the pollen in a little because people have a problem with pollen. There is a belief that the cedars steal water and that they suck up all the water, and so nothing else can grow around them. Now, the main reason nothing can grow around them is because they shade the area, and a lot of the prairie grasses need full sun. So when you got the shade of the cedar, it prevents it. They've actually shown more studies that the leaves and the body of the Texas cedar, the mountain cedar, actually collects the water, funnels it down its taproot, and plays a big role in refilling the aquifers. So they actually help drive the water underground again rather than flowing across the surface and being washed away. So when you think about it, aquifers are very important, especially in the hill country. The fact that they help refill the aquifers, it's kind of important. Okay, sip of water. Where is my... Okay, so are cedars invasive? Well, in 1999, there was an actual presidential executive order, number 13112, that defined invasive species. To be an invasive species, there are two things you have to be. You have to be non-native or alien to the ecosystem under consideration. So not necessarily, non-native to some geographic boundary, political boundary, just non-native to the ecosystem where it now is occurring, and also whose introduction causes or is likely to cause economic or environmental harm or harm to human health. So they defined it basically as a plant showing up somewhere and interfering with the way that land is currently used to make money. And so when people think about cedar, well, it kind of fits that. But the US government is happy enough to list the plants it considers invasive. Cedars are not on it. So here in Texas, we got the alligator weed, we got the giant reed, we got the hedge bindweed, balloon vine, field, all these, water hyacinth. There's a number of these that are actually, edible. Kudzu, things like that. Chinese tallow tree, Chinese tallow tree. So at least according to the US government, since 1999, the Texas cedars and the red cedars are not invasive. They do not meet the government definition of invasive. Okay. So what's going on? So what's going on is basically humans, we kind of suck at properly caring for the land. If we really wanted to control the cedar issue, we would be lighting fires, twice a year, burning, the area where the cedar is, and, getting rid of it. But we're not doing that. And I really don't think we are doing that anymore. It's going to be a long time before we start burning things in sight because people live there now. You can't really burn just the trees without, everything else going up. So yeah, by not burning, the prairie, just lighting it on fire, we've allowed the cedars to take root, which has destroyed the native grasses. So the cedar ecosystem is completely out of whack. And so it's just going to get growing more and more. So we're going to get more and more cedars. But like I said earlier, one of the bonuses of the extra cedars is there is actually more water being directed into the aquifers. So for the hill country cities, Austin, San Antonio, all those that rely on the different aquifers, maybe it's a good thing that the cedars are there. I don't know. Okay. So yeah. All right. You know what? Let's do a quick word to a sponsor. Hold on here. Let me share this. Okay. Application window. All right. We already talked about the foraging bandana. Let's jump over to outdoor tools from Campcraft Outdoors. If you are like me and you want to be out in the wild, leaving civilization behind, you don't want to bring a bunch of plastic with you. You want good stuff. And especially in the knives, I got to tell you, let's see, whoops, load more. Come on, you load more. Oh, okay, they're sold out again. Oh, wait, no, there is. So they sent me one of these Vagabond knives, absolutely the sharpest thing I've ever touched in my life. But being a fan of big knives, I'm really looking at drooling. Why is this not working? Yeah, the General Woods Bowie. Oh, well. Never going to have it. I got more important things to spend my money on. But if you don't, you can use the coupon code TAKE10 and get 10% off. Let's save $20. That's like a bargain. Very awesome. Okay. Let us go back to tonight's presentation. Application window. Okay. So we talked earlier, the red cedar, it is an East Texas sort of thing. You can see it starts actually kind of in the lower central area here, kind of south of the Hill Country, but then goes all the way across up into, Canada. Blame Canada. It's kind of funny. It's out here, is that Washington? No, Oregon. Wow. They both look the same. Anyway. Yeah, so the red cedar, it just basically starts here. Here's Houston, like Houston, it's right here, and then it just goes all the way up north. So you're going to find it out there if you're out in the East Texas area, or pretty much anywhere, east of Texas. You are going to find the red cedar. That's the one you're going to find. So identification, shape. It is usually 66 feet tall at maturity. So it's not a giant tree, but not a small one either. It's going to be pyramidal. Sometimes it'll be fairly columnar. Sometimes it's described as a Kendall. It really depends on, a number of different things. Does it kind of spread out some, or does it stay narrow? And it has a single trunk, nice big single trunk. So if we look at said trunk, okay, I guess we'll get to the trunk. So the leaves, they are evergreen, scaled. Some people, when they look at them, they think they are pine needles, but what they are is they're a bunch of overlapping scales, like dragon scales. So scaly leaves, interesting chemistry. So they have safrole, which is also in the sassafras root, the flavor of root beer. So not a high amount, but it has some. It has limonene, which is one of the key components in like lemon and lime and orange peels. So you basically have a orange root beer combo here going on. It has a low amount of thujone, and we'll talk about thujone in a little bit because thujone has some interesting powers of its own right. And then a lot of just cedar essential oil. So, which is just a mixture of a whole bunch of compounds that make that cedar oil resiny sort of smell. It also has photophytotoxin, which is an interesting molecule. It's actually used as a precursor in the synthesis of some anti-cancer medication. So they get that from extraction of the leaves and a little bit from the wood, but probably mainly from the leaves. Main uses of the leaves: flavoring, fragrance, and then on a medicinal side, it has components that are a digestive and respiratory aid. So one of the things I've mentioned I like doing is making a balsamic vinegar using cedar leaves and cedar wood, equal parts. So 1 part cedar leaves, 1 part regular cedar wood, and 1 part somewhat charred roasted cedar wood. and take a bottle of Bragg's apple cider vinegar, pour off half a cup, put the equal amounts of burned wood, unburned wood, and leaves that have been kind of smashed to rupture in the apple cider, seal it up, let it sit 6 to 8 weeks, strain out the plant material, and now you have something that tastes surprisingly like balsamic vinegar, but using apple cider vinegar. You can do this with the red cedar or the Texas cedar. And along with all the benefits of apple cider vinegar, it also works as a digestive aid. And if you use it to make fire cider, which is apple cider vinegar and garlic and onion and horseradish and lemon, it is even better for you for respiratory issues. Okay, the trunk. So the outer bark is peeling and fibrous. So this makes an excellent tinder for starting fires. If you're lost out in the woods and you find a cedar tree, at least you got some really good starting material for a fire. Even when it's kind of damp, if you dig in it some, there's usually enough of that cedar oil, which is fairly flammable, to help it catch flame. The fibers were also long and would be collected, pounded, and woven into textiles for clothing. So a number of Native Americans would use shirts and robes and blankets made from pounded and woven red cedar bark. I'm assuming they stayed away from fires when they were wearing it. So the inner wood has a number of medicinal properties. So it has that soothes respiratory inflammation. So, if you're having a cold, you're having a sore throat, bronchitis sort of thing, a tea or tincture with a little bit of this wood in there will help with that. Soothes gastrointestinal inflammations. I don't know about an ulcer, but other sort of irritated bowels, again, a small bit of tea or tincture that has a bit of red cedar in it, you're good. It is somewhat of a diuretic, so it will help pass things. Antimicrobial, so you can use it, again, it was mainly used externally in infected wounds to help, try and control that. The reason I don't like using the cedar for an internal antimicrobial is because if you start taking too much of it, it can damage the liver. And usually to fight internal infections, you need a lot. So generally for the antimicrobial and antifungal, use it as an external wash. Okay, but going back to internal, menstrual pain relief and rheumatic pain reliever. Ooh, here is a great question. Oops, if I can get my cursor there. Oops. Okay. Are any of these uses okay for one that has cedar allergies, mainly to the pollens? Probably not. If you have a severe cedar allergy, there is a good chance that like the infused vinegar or a cedar tea may also cause inflammation or cedar allergies. So that is a bummer. If you're using it for cooking and keeping it on the counter in a nice jar, can you leave a few sprigs in it? Yeah, that's fine. Just 1 or 2 sprigs. The main reason for filtering it out after 6 weeks is just to avoid getting too much of the cedar essential oil into it, which again has a possibility of liver damage. I'm sorry, Kimberly, but yeah. You might get away with like the using a wash, the antimicrobial, antifungal wash on the surface of your skin, but taking it in would likely cause an allergy. Okay. Oops. Now the berries. The berries of the red cedar were considered a delicacy by the Native Americans. They're edible. They're gin flavored. So if you know gin, you know juniper berries, cedar berries. The Germans that settled Texas started using them to flavor their sauerkraut. And a person mentioned one time earlier at the donut shop that they use it in their sauerbraten, which would be awesome. So yeah, there's a number of sausages and things like that where they would throw a few red cedar berries in them. The really cool thing about the berries, though, is on the surface of the berries, this kind of gray, light blue, we'll call it gray, light blue color. That's actually wild yeast. Wild yeast. It rubs off easily, but you can just leave it on there. But where you got yeast, you have the ability to ferment things. So you can use these to trigger the creation of sourdough, which is good. Sourdough is delicious. You just throw a handful of the berries in your flour water mix where you're trying to get going into a sourdough and let the yeast on there take over. But the neat thing about these berries is they contain sugar, and a fair amount of sugar. They have kind of a sweet, resiny flavor. But where you have sugar and you have yeast and you have a little water, you get alcohol. So you get just mashing up the berries in some water and sealing it with a little vapor lock on top, it will self-ferment. Now, most wild yeasts will basically kill themselves off when the alcohol concentration gets up where somewhere between 3.5 up to maybe 5% alcohol. So you might get lucky, you might get 4. It's pretty rare for it to get to 5. But using the red cedar juniper berries to start fermentation is a good thing to do. I like it. Now, the other thing in there is the leaves of the red cedar, or sorry, not the leaves, the berries of the red cedar are high in thujone, which is a chemical component. One of the things that the thujone does is it can start messing around with the GABA receptors. And so that is generally considered a bad. So if you're getting lots and lots of thujone, it can actually kind of start messing with your brain. But the other thing that the thujone does is it interferes with the alcohol dehydrogenase enzyme. So it's an alcohol dehydrogenase inhibition, which means it shuts down your body's ability to break down alcohol. That means that if you have made some sort of alcoholic drink with the berries of the red cedar, and from what I could tell, all cedars have some tiny amount of thujone in it, but the red cedar has actually a fairly high amount of thujone, not excessively high where it's going to start turning your brain off, but it definitely does turn off your body's ability to break down alcohol, which means the alcohol just stays in your blood. The alcohol blood content goes up and up and up, and you've just turned yourself into a cheap drunk. If you remember, I've heard of the drink absinthe. It used the plant wormwood, and it was believed to be a hallucinogen. What was going on is in wormwood, there is thujone, and so it was interfering with the body's ability to break down alcohol. So the drinks hit much harder. So even though, like, if you just self-fermented these and you had something that was, 3.5% alcohol, but it also has that thujone in there, it's more like drinking 5 or 7% alcohol. So it can hit you. So keep that in mind if you want to be a cheap drunk. A little careful though. Usually, I guess I can say that, this is for entertainment purpose only. I do not recommend you do it at home. I am a trained chemist professional. Yeah. So, just like, 1 or 2 berries, dropped in your gin and tonic, makes it more gin-like and, helps it stay in your system a bit longer. Something to think about. Okay. Any questions? Yeah, people like gin. I'm a big fan of gin. Okay. So that's the red cedar. Yeah, Sai, is that why birds like them so much? Yeah, birds like to get drunk. Man, have you ever seen a bunch of drunk cedar waxwings? Scary. Okay, how old do the berries need to be eaten? So usually, if they are that color, kind of that about the size of popcorn kernels, and have a nice coating of that gray powder, they're good to go. If you get them too early, they're going to have less sugar, so they're going to taste more resiny. What I recommend is, if there is a cedar tree that's easy to get to, red cedar. We'll talk more about the Texas cedar coming up here in a second, but the red cedar, nibble it, start when the berries appear and find out, track it. When is it best? Because it's going to be different from tree to tree and weather to weather. But, if the tree is nearby, go ahead and start tasting it and see when you like it. Okay, another good question. Deanna, can you use the alcohol to clean and sterilize surfaces? No, the concentration is too low for any sort of sterilization process. The the Institute of Health recommends that the alcohol concentration be around 75% alcohol. Whereas with the cedar, like I said, you're only going to get maybe 3 to 5%. So it's nowhere near strong enough to really kill any bacteria. Good question, though. That was a good question. Oh, Kimberly, yeah, maybe the reason I hate gin is my body's rejecting the cedar. Quite possibly. Bummer. Well, more gin for me. Okay, so the Texas cedar, aka mountain cedar, aka juniper, Juniperus ashei, much lower zone of life, if you will. And so it's kind of the hill country going out to West Texas. And then a little bit up in Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri. But again, just along the little eastern edge here, there's just a few little spots of it. So, oh, Deanna, absinthe and vermouth, an obituary cocktail. Yeah, that would be potent. That would be very potent. It'd be very sweet. Well, anyway. Okay, so lower range, but West Texas sort of area, hill country, that's where you're going to find it. Identification. Now that we've stopped burning the prairie and the hill country, the trees are much smaller than they used to be. They're only going to be about 33 feet tall. They're going to be roundish, and they're going to be multi-trunked. Ooh, here's a good question. So, is it true ticks like to live in cedar, or is that a myth? I don't know for sure about the cedar trees themselves, but they definitely like to hang out in the grasses that grow on the edge of the drip line of the cedar. So maybe not on the cedar, but right, in the grasses right around it. Because the ticks, they want to be closer to the ground where the animals are. So if they're up high in the tree, maybe they get on a bird, but I don't know. I've never really seen a wood tick on a bird, but they want to be lower in. They're going to be in the grasses, clinging to the grasses, waiting for you to come by. Okay, so roundish, multi-trunked, a cedar tree, not Christmas tree shaped like the red cedar. Oops. Okay, so the leaves are similar, though. They're that scales. You can see it a little better here. Each one of these little nubs is a leaf, and they just kind of overlap each other. One of the adaptations of the cedar tree is those scales reduce its loss to evaporation and transpiration, the tree sweat, if you will. So that's one of the reasons it prefers a little more arid areas. So as far as the chemistry goes, I was kind of disappointed. I spent a number of hours pouring through books and research papers and so forth, and there really hasn't been a lot of work done specifically on the Texas cedar, the chemistry in it. Based on the smell, there's definitely the limonene and the saffrol, but no real good measurements. There is a lot of cedar essential oil, and actually the Texas cedar, the Juniperus ashei, is the preferred source of the essential oils that you buy from doTERRA and other essential oil, Living Earth or something like that. The essential oils, a lot of those come from the Texas cedars. It does only have a small amount of that podophyllitoxin material that is used as a precursor for making the anti-cancer drug. So it's not really used for that. As far as the uses of the leaves, from my own personal experience, again, flavorings, fragrance, the digestive and respiratory aid sort of thing. So they work similar to the red cedar. There is less science supporting it. So this is more anecdotal sort of thing. So keep that in mind. All right. The bark isn't quite as fibrous and stringy as the red cedar, so it did not, at least as far as I could find in the ethnobotany books and so forth, it was never used to make clothing like the red cedar. It was used a lot for tinder, though, because like the red cedar, it is still nice and fine and very flammable. The inner wood, from a scientific point of view, there's little to no scientific studies done specifically on the juniper ashei. So again, if you go back to the red cedar and the different things that's used there, antifungal, antibacterial, it probably does that, but there's no scientific proof. So, if you're looking for a good antifungal, go ahead and use it. It's going to have some effect, antifungal effect, antimicrobial effect, but the science just hasn't followed it. They haven't, studied it in detail. Ooh, Ellen, good question. Okay, why are there two types of leaf textures, soft and other somewhat prickly? Good question. I'm not sure of the answer. I know what you're talking about. So it is time for a scientific wild beep guess, or a swag, SWAG. But my experiences with that tree is that softer stuff seems to be a newer growth, and then the more prickly stuff is an older. So it might just be a general drying and solidifying of the leaves. Kind of like my skin nowadays as I'm entering middle age. Things are getting a little tougher. So I think it's mainly just an age sort of thing. Ooh. Okay, Jonathan, do cedar tea recipes call for dry scales or crushed fresh scales? So because the particular molecules in them are somewhat volatile, they evaporate away, you can actually use crushed fresh scales in the tea or the dried. So, just mash them up, hit them between a spoon, away you go. So, but yeah, you can use either the crushed fresh or the dried. Oh, wow. I live about 40 miles from a Texas Cedar essential oil distillery. I love to drive real slow and roll down my windows. It smells very good. Wow, where is that? That would be neat. I'd like to see that. Young tree protection syndrome system. That might be the scaly things too, or the help define the leaves. Yes. Okay. Andrew jumped ahead, but that's okay. So the Texas cedar, it is the only nesting tree for the yellow-cheeked warbler. So this particular bird, the only place it will make a nest and lay its eggs and raise its young is around Texas cedar. So it's good for that because it is a cool looking bird. Warblers in general are neat birds. The yellow-cheeked warbler being very, very specific and unique to Texas just makes it all that much more special. Okay, the distilling place is in Leakey, Texas. I need to check that out. I think I go through there. Okay, yeah. So go ahead and use the wood for what the red cedar was used. So digestive aid, rheumatoid, and menstrual pain relief, bacterial, antibacterial, antifungal sort of things. But like I said, there's no scientific backing yet on this, that the Texas cedar wood compounds have the same effect as the red cedar. Where is my mouse? There we go. Okay. The berries, again, like the red cedar, they are edible. They have a gin-like flavor. They were used to make sauerkraut and things like that by the Germans. The berries themselves, while they do have the wild yeast on the surface, they do not have sugar in them. So if you actually just try and eat the berry, it's going to be like putting a drop of cedar oil on your tongue. It's going to be a very strong, resinous cedar flavor with no sweetness to cut it. I don't recommend doing it. 2 or 3 in a quart of sauerkraut, mixed in with some sausage, things like that. Yeah. But as far as self-fermenting or just eating, no, they don't contain sugar, so they're not going to do that. You're going to have to use some other sugar source with the wild yeast to get the fermentation going. Also note, they do not contain the thujone. So there's no thujone in the berries. So even if you were using them to make alcohol, you're not going to get that special extra little kick from kind of screwing up your body's ability to break down alcohol for a number of hours. So when it comes down to it, the Texas cedar, unfortunately, it's the berries. You can use them to make sourdough, or make a gin-like infused alcohol, or gin-flavored sauerkraut. But that's really about it. Kind of a bummer. But not as big. Ooh, wait. Okay, here, let's... Tracy, okay, how small do I need to make the pieces of wood before soaking? The smaller, the better, because you want lots of surface area for the oils to leak out. So, I mean, really, if you can shave it down into tea size, like regular grains of tea size, that's what you're aiming for. Here's a trick. Look for pencil-sized pieces of wood and use a pencil sharpener. Get your food grade pencil sharpener that no one else is allowed to touch, and use that to grind up the cedar sticks. Ooh, okay. All right, Dan. Okay. 1 part leaf, 1 part burned wood, 1 part unburned wood by volume. So just, you're not going by weight, you're going by volume. And then with the apple cider vinegar, you take your 750 milliliter bottle, pour off half a cup, and then start mixing in the leaf and 2 woods until you've returned the apple cider vinegar level to where it was before you took that half a cup out. So you're adding approximately 1/2 cup mixture, equal parts mixture of leaf, wood, burned wood, and unburned wood into the apple cider vinegar. Ooh, yeah, a planer would work too. Making the shaved curls. I would not use sandpaper, just because with sandpaper, you're going to make it so fine, you're going to make it such a dust that it's very likely to cause an allergic reaction, even if you haven't been allergic to it before. And also, trying to filter out sawdust is very hard to do. Ooh, here's a question. Do bees collect Texas cedar pollen? Hey, uncommon bees. Do you happen to know that? I do not know about this. I don't know if they do or not. I kind of doubt it, because it's a wind pollinated plant. So it is just ejecting the pollen into the air. It's not going to be sticky like the sort of pollens that clings to bees. And the flowers themselves probably don't produce a lot of nectar. I don't recall ever seeing bees around the cedar trees, but maybe. Good question. Oh, okay. I need to tell Cleo something. Hey, Cleo, hope you're still listening. February 27th, I will be back at Uncommon Bees in Jasper. So I wanted to make sure you had plenty of advance notice. So at the end of this month, Saturday, February 27th, I'll be just down the road from you at Uncommon Bees teaching classes. Okay. So the cedar fever, it is due to the pollen. It's only produced by the male trees. Usually starts in January and can go into February. So it's a multi-month ordeal. Here's what's interesting. Well, lots of interesting, but the fact that the pollen from a single tree in the wind can travel up to 100 miles and still be in a high enough concentration in the air to trigger an allergic reaction. 100 miles and still be thick enough to trigger an allergic reaction. What this means, if on your piece of property, you decide, I am tired of my cedar allergies, I'm going to cut down all the male trees and get rid of it, and I will never suffer again. Well, guess what? If there are cedar trees within 100 miles of you, you're going to keep suffering. So, hate to break that to you, but that's what's going on. So, yeah, if you're allergic to cedar pollen, you have my sympathy. You are truly screwed because you are not going to be able to escape it for the most part. So, what science says to treat cedar fever, first off, avoid contact. So, if you during the pollen producing season, you stay indoors, you have an AC unit with a really good filtering system, you wash thoroughly after you get in because any pollen that landed on your clothes doesn't get tossed up into the air around you and you inhale it and get an allergic reaction. Basically, you have to take the COVID prevention type stuff. So yeah, pretend it is the COVID virus. Wash your hands, wash your skin, shower, wash your hair every time you return indoors to make sure no pollen is on you. The antihistamines like Benadryl offer some relief to some people. Part of the issue is how bad is your allergy? How strongly is your body going to fight the pollen? How much did you get in? Things like that. So this can affect whether the antihistamines like Benadryl. Some people, Benadryl is good enough. I don't know if Zyrtec is an antihistamine or not, but antihistamines are your friend. The nasal irrigation. So the old neti pot of shooting a saline mixture up into your nose, swishing it around and blowing it back out again. Oh, no, thank you. But yeah, nasal irrigation to rinse the pollen out of the nasal passages is recommended. And if those things aren't working, then we go to the prescription, like the oral or nasal corticosteroids, usually some sort of shot to, a superpowered antihistamine, basically suppressing your immune system, or other types of allergy shots, trying to train your body to adjust to it. C throws out there, I start eating the pollen in November to build up immunity to it, and then add the berries when it's ripe. That may work for some, that may not work for others. I know this is a common way with poison ivy. People will say to avoid poison ivy, they will eat a small leaf when it first shows up in the spring, and then like once a day or once a week, eat poison ivy, until they're up and running, sort of thing. Scientific studies that have actually said, looked at, does eating poison ivy help prevent poison ivy? Those studies were stopped when all the people that were getting the poison ivy developed internal poison ivy rashes. Very unpleasant. So if it's working for you, awesome. The science is still saying it's really hit or miss. It may work for some, it may work for others. May not work for others. Okay. As far as herbal treatments, what herbs may be around that can help with that help with the inflammation and, all the symptoms of the allergy? Well, up in the Hill Country, especially right now, there's a lot of horehound around, and horehound has been shown to help relieve allergy symptoms. This could be one of those cases where the poison and the cure are found right next to each other because the horehound likes to grow around the Texas cedar. So you can jump over to Foraging Texas, see what horehound looks like. Very distinctive plant, very potent plant. Very interesting smell, but it can work. Goldenrod, stinging nettle, and mullein are all very potent anti-allergy type herbs, and all these grow in the Hill Country. So there in the Hill Country, around the cedar, you're a good chance of finding the goldenrod, the horehound, and stinging nettle, and the mullein. So take a look for those. Jump over to the Foraging Texas website. I'll put up links later. You can see it there. If you want to go non-local, like if you want to order from, hey, segue. If you want to order from herbs, whoop, stop screen share, application window. All right, share. So another sponsor of Foraging Texas, herbs by tribe member Ricardo Shilly Shally. Definitely want to look up and get those herbs from him, and I'll have the herb list back up here in a second. But you can actually see here he has mullein. So he has both the local, and he can get you the others that we're going to jump back and talk about. If you use the coupon code Forking Weeds between now and midnight tonight, you get 15% off your order. And since we're doing this and we're talking about trees, arbor tree, if you decide you're going to do it anyway, you're just going to cut down all the trees on your property, at least have a professional do it. So give Arbor True a call. Big thanks to Arbor True. They also pay for the high-speed internet connection that I use to bring this stuff to you. So, why is that not? Okay. And since we got you, I'm not done with the presentation, but if you are looking to survive the cedar season, well, okay, maybe fear and dread isn't necessarily the right sort of survival gear, but hey, there are other threats out in the world than just cedar. So give them a check out. And, they got all sorts of stuff there you might want. But check them out. And then if you use the coupon code TRIBE, you get 7% savings. That's money. Okay, stop screen. Share screen. I wish I had the ability to share multiple screens, but I don't. Okay, so non-native, non-local herbs. So butterbur is considered probably one of the top anti-allergy herbs. I've tried growing it here, and I wasn't that successful. You might have better luck, but you can order the butterbur tea and use that when the allergy season is hitting. Lemon balm and peppermint, some more good ones, not as strong as butterbur, and frankly, not as strong as a horehound and goldenrod. I would say go horehound, goldenrod, stinging nettle, mullein before lemon balm or peppermint, but you can grow lemon balm and peppermint pretty easily in Texas gardens. It's just not native. The Robius, I don't know how to pronounce this, but the Roabos tea also has some allergy fighting properties. And of course, turmeric, your favorite and mine, turmeric, to help with the inflammation type stuff. Keep in mind, if you're taking turmeric, you want to mix in a little black pepper with it too. The black pepper is needed to improve the bioavailability of the compounds in the turmeric that do what you want them to do, that give you the power you need. Okay. Cool. End of slideshow. Whoops. I need to bring my... Okay. Wow. Almost perfect timing. So there we have it. Cedars, love them, hate them. They have a purpose. Everything on this planet has a purpose. Keep that in mind. You have a purpose. People may not like you. No, just kidding. But you have a purpose. No, you're all lovable people. I like you people. I haven't seen any trolls show up. Okay, so hopefully you got some information out of that. We got 63 viewers here. Cool. Focus. I'm out of focus. That's all right. I feel out of focus. So it is time to shut this down. You guys can go return to your daily duties, nightly duties, whatever you do when you're not watching me. Hopefully you return tomorrow, though, for the donut shop at the beginning of the world. Like I said, it's puppet show time. Yeah. Anyway, I will see you tomorrow. Have a great evening. Take care. Whoa, invisible mug. Cool. Sorry, easily distracted. All right. End broadcast. Good night, everyone.